Hey guys, and welcome back to the North Pole. This is the last episode of our Christmas mini-series, and in it we'll be building a Christmas village. The level of detail won't be as high as in Santa's workshop, as this build isn't really the focal point of the project. But regardless, it does come out about as good as I wanted it to, and it does fit in very well in the build. So let's just get right into the build. So our Christmas village is going to be situated at the base of the hill upon which the workshop sits, and there's this single road with our little toy train connection that'll carry workers between the workshop and the town, where the road becomes a cobblestone road. And I originally was planning on making this town a more European style, but since the workshop was in a more American brick style, I chose to structure the town similarly to a small historic American town, at least in this central area. And I started with this main street here, where I used Smiley's wall-to-wall mixed-use commercial assets to give my town its center. And this street will have floor-level stores and cafes, and above them some apartments and studios for the elves. Now, as I said, this build won't be the most detailed, so I'm just going to try and make a nice functional pedestrianized small town with a Christmas touch. And I could definitely have gone for the same level of detail as I did for Santa's workshop, but it is January and Christmas is in the past now. And right here by the rails, I did want to have a bit more higher density housing heading away from the downtown core. And I just did this so that it wouldn't just be the main street with the buildings and then directly into our lower density houses. And I do want this town to be pedestrianized, as cars just don't feel very realistic within this project. So for my roads, I've used these one-way Parisian cobblestone alleys. And since there are no vehicles, I didn't have to worry about any issues caused by there being one way. And then, in order to move people around what will be a fairly low-density town, I'll have another little train line that will run along another cobblestone road parallel to the rails, which will serve as one of the borders to the town. And now I've stretched the roads all this way, as I wanted to place some houses on these difficult elevations. As one of the main aesthetics that I'm going for within this project is having a lot of clashing lines and angles created by the snow-covered rooftops of these houses sitting at different heights and angles, caused by the hills and by the awkward road network. And as for the houses themselves, I'll be using some very lovely Christmas chalets by Tomcat, which were legitimately perfect for this project and were what convinced me to go for a more suburban style, as I was originally planning on just a few European row houses around a big Christmas plaza. Now that very suburban nature of this town meant that all of the detail for these house-only areas is everything you've seen me do so far, as detailing suburbs is quite painful. So, for these suburbs, what I've done is instead tried to fill the maximum amount of space with as many houses as possible within these blocks, trying to create different angles and use different chalet types. And this was done in order to preserve that clashing rooftop aesthetic that I was going for, and that was made easier by the unique shapes of these blocks, as any semblance of a grid only made it as far as one block from the main street. I also just added a quick snowfall skating rink right here, as it does fit the spot very well, and I will remove the lights with Prop It Up, as I plan on adding my own lighting to the town. Now this curved road that I've stretched this way will be the final border of our village, as I didn't want it to be too large and it doesn't really need to have a particularly smooth transition into the wilderness, as this town and the workshop are themselves very self-contained. Now for this area, I've gone with a slightly more sensible road network, but it does still have enough room for fun angles to maintain the charmingly disorganized feel of our town. And then I spent quite a while just filling these blocks with the chalets. And since the chalets themselves already have Christmas light decorations, I was saved from having to add Christmas lights and decorate all of each house individually, which was a big time saver and was essentially what let me build a town of this suburban nature. And now you're seeing me do the last thing that I needed to do for the town from a functional standpoint, before I began sprinkling detail throughout the build. Being using Traffic Manager to ensure that no vehicles are allowed on our streets, and I also later went through off camera and banned parking from all of the streets. After that, it was just a matter of detailing, and I did mainly focus my efforts on Main Street. And for this town, my main detailing approach was not a photorealism like in Canada, or perfecting the atmosphere like I did with the workshop, but instead using networks and other such things to achieve the maximum level, a relatively high level of detail really, for a relatively low level of effort and time, and still trying to somehow capture that Christmassy atmosphere. And I started that right there with this back path behind the buildings, and then I used that same park life network on the main street, placing it jutting out onto the road to cover the parking spaces and widen the sidewalks. This also saved me the trouble of having to use decals on these sidewalks. And then just to finish off the main street, I added some planters and illuminated trees, and that was really all I had to do, as the network already has benches and garbage bins and the like. Now for this larger chalet building, I imagine it's some sort of community center, so next to it I just placed some paths for like a quick little park. And it was those paths that inspired me to use some old gas lights and prop line tool to line those lights through the streets of the town. And for me, they really were what made this entire build work, and what really made it look so much better than it did before, as they just create this phenomenal aesthetic through the town, as they're just bright enough to illuminate the snow on the road, but not much else. And that's really for me very impactful in working on our Christmas night atmosphere. And speaking of night, in the end I decided to not do daytime footage despite the votes that clearly said you wanted it, just because this is the last episode. So I figured I'll just be consistent for the series. I'm sorry. And then with my lighting done and some sparse detailing throughout, I felt like I'd mostly achieved the proper look that I wanted when the town is viewed at like a medium distance, which is about what I was aiming for, right? So what was left to do was just go through and fill the empty spaces with a bit of foliage and quickly decorate this back path here. You know, just going through and filling spaces with little details that emphasize the cozy winter vibe of this town. And that is it for City Skylines Christmas. It has been a very fun series to do, and I did really enjoy the builds, and I hope you did too. And there will be no more City Skylines Christmas videos, at least in the current pipeline. But you can expect to see a showcase video and a public release of the save game in about a year if I remember to do it. And as for this channel, in the next few months we'll be going back to Canada and building our downtown, which is something that I've already started and that looks really, really good. And we'll also have a lot of tutorial videos through January and through February, one of which is already available on Patreon Early Access and will drop this Friday. So thank you for watching, and although I know it's already passed, Merry Christmas.